Alright guys, today is maintenance day, and while it's going to be a shorter maintenance, we are only getting one new ship today. World 15 is coming to the game, the newest chapter of the main story, and honestly at first glance it definitely looks like it's going to be the most difficult content so far. I've spent the last 2 hours going over the different mechanics that are coming in with this new chapter. I'm so excited to actually get into the game and play it when the maintenance is over. So in this video, I'm going to talk about all of the new mechanics there and what we're going to have to deal with in World 15. After that, we're going to talk about the new ship Houston 2. She drops in World 15, so we'll see if all of the effort we're going to put into this chapter is going to be worth it at the end of this video. Before we get into the Chapter 15 details, I just want to briefly go over the other aspects of the patch notes. There is going to be a Tempesta secret shipyard event, which might explain why a Azur official was going cuckoo on Twitter earlier today. That and the fact that it's confirmed that the next event is going to be a Tempesta event. We will be getting the new ship Golden Hind, which is very exciting, and there's a lot to talk about that, but she isn't coming in this patch note. She'll be coming in the next one, so wait until that one. This mini event is going to culminate in getting just a simple item. The Tempesta banner is an elite equipment that gives evasion for its base stat, 20 at plus 10, 21 at plus 11, and its skill reads, when the ship is afloat, if an enemy unit exists within 20 units of this ship, you get plus 5% firepower. It's a Tempesta faction item, and it can be put on any ship. Honestly, it's not a very good item. This auxiliary slot can be used for much better things. You can use it on your Tempesta ship. At this point, it's just Royal Fortune, but in the near future, we'll be getting more. Honestly, this item's not very good. It's collection only, but it should be pretty easy to obtain for those who want it. All right, guys, Chapter 15 is finally here. And no, we are not going to get the assist of a level cap increase. We are going to be stuck at fighting this at level 125 for the time being. We'll probably increase that in the future and it'll become easier, but for now, we have a challenge. Oh boy, if you thought World 13 was a plain hell, well, you are in for a surprise when you get to World 15. This is going to be the most difficult playing content yet. So let's talk about some of the new game features of World 15 that are going to make it really hard, but also some of the features that will be interesting and change the way that you have to play. First things first, we have to talk about the carrier support fleet. Traditionally, in the main story, you would only have 2 fleets that you can call into battle. In World 15, you're going to have a 3rd carrier fleet. Now, this is not a normal fleet. It only is going to consist of 3 carrier slots. You can only put carriers in them. There is no vanguard. It never shows up on the map. For all those reasons, that's not really a fleet. It doesn't count towards your recon value. It doesn't increase your ACV value. It does not cost oil. It does not lose morale or gain affection or affinity. So for something that doesn't show up on the map and doesn't do any of those things I just listed, what does it do? Well, most importantly, the carriers that are in this fleet will be able to intercept during the battles you have. And for those of you who forgot what interception means, that means when the enemy airplanes come to fight you, you can launch your fighters and other special anti-air planes to intercept them. This decreases the damage that they will do, potentially shoots them down, and is very important to staying alive in maps that are very aviation centered. This means potentially in a battle you have in World 15, you could have 6 carriers to intercept the enemy aircraft. That is a ton of planes to intercept what they're trying to do, and you are probably going to need them because of how difficult the aviation damage is in this map. This also means that for your support carrier fleet, you're going to really need carriers with fighters, fighter slots, and more importantly, how many fighters that you have in each slot. Right now, preliminarily, the 3 best meta ships that you can put into this fleet coming out of maintenance right now would be Illustrious, Indomitable, and Implacable. They each have 6 fighter planes, very important, and you can put Wyverns in their torpedo bomber slots. Damage is going to be a little less important here because it's just a support fleet. You can get your normal DPS from the actual fleet that's fighting, and we don't care about any cross-fleet skills because this fleet is technically not in the sortie, so to speak. It's a support fleet. None of those cross-fleet skills are going to affect, so unfortunately, you can't just drop a bunch of cross-fleet skills in this fleet and double up on them. Additionally, there is going to be a DPS component of this aircraft carrier support fleet. You can actually do targeted or area of effect airstrikes on the map. These are going to act very similarly to submarines, except they do not cost oil. So this is going to be very important in adding extra damage. Use these wisely. So with all this extra support from your carriers, you can imagine how more difficult the map is going to be than, say, World 13. So let's get into why this map is going to be more difficult other than just being a ton of planes. First things first, the most important aspect is going to be the enemy special support carrier. If you see this on your map, you are in trouble. This is going to be something you need to remove ASAP. What this does is it gives all of the enemies a buff, an air support buff in battle, and it will literally make it very hard, near impossible for your fleets to survive through all of the mob nodes to the boss. As soon as you see these special support carrier nodes, take a V line towards them and get rid of them as soon as possible. You do not want these sticking around. You need to use your airstrikes from your allied support carrier fleet to take this out very soon. These are going to be difficult battles. There's going to be a lot of damage in the air coming towards you, and so you're going to want to lower its HP with those airstrikes before you go into this fight. So as far as strategy-wise, while this is an annoying feature and you definitely need to kill these soon, it is pretty easy. If you see them, kill them and get rid of them and move on. The next feature that's going to make the enemy a lot harder to defeat is the smoke screen. Special enemies will have a smoke screen that gives them a concealment gauge, and while that gauge is high, their evasion is high. They're going to get basically an evasion buff while they're in their smoke screen. Very self-explanatory, but it's going to be very hard to hit them. While you are fighting them and they're in the smoke screen, that gauge will slowly decrease, and the evasion buff that they get is actually going to be proportional to how high that gauge is. So the lower that gauge goes, the higher the probability is that you will be able to actually hit them. Also note, if for any reason they leave the smoke screen, for example, if you pull them out with a skill or whatever reason that they leave the smoke screen, they're going to lose that gauge and they'll be able to hit them easier. But if they ever go back in the smoke screen, they'll get their gauge back and you'll have to kind of continue lowering it throughout the battle. One thing to note is also, because of the way the gauge works, the battle is probably going to be a lot longer. At the beginning of the battle, you're going to be missing a ton and you're going to have to wait for that bar to get progressively lower so that you can actually deal more damage. This means that your fleet is going to have to be ready to survive in the long run. Additionally, this evasion is going to make it massively important that you have good hit stat. Hit stat is going to be vital to actually clearing maps quickly because you are going to have a ton of your shots miss if you don't have really, really good hit stat because of this evasion buff. So hit stat's going to be very important, and you're also going to need to make sure that your fleet can heal or survive long battles. All right, we are moving into the third and final buff that the enemies are going to get, and this one is by far the most game-changing. And this is the enemy flagship will retreat. What does that mean? That means unlike all of the other maps ever in Azur Lane's history, you have a mob fleet, it kills the mobs, and then you have a second fleet that kills the boss. In Chapter 15, when you defeat the boss will go into hiding, it will leave the map, it will not be defeated, it will retreat, the mobs will respawn, and you'll have to clear the mobs to visualize the boss again and defeat it again. And if you thought you only had to do it once, well, you're going to have to beat the boss 3 times in Chapter 15-4. So this means that your fleet can't just beat the boss once. It can't just skim by and beat it that one time. It has to beat it multiple times. And each time it's going to get a little progressively harder, but we'll get into that when we get further into the boss data. And the really tricky part about this retreating boss fleet is the fleet analysis component. Once you use a fleet to beat a boss, it will be marked as analyzed. An analyzed fleet, if it were to fight another boss, is going to have severe debuffs. It will take more damage from the enemy and it will deal significantly less damage to the enemy. It will effectively be not usable in the next time the boss shows up. That means, in a way, you you are effectively prevented from doing the traditional mob fleet, boss fleet structure. Both of your fleets are going to have to be boss fleets because each one is going to have to beat the boss itself at least once. This completely changes the mindset you're going to have to be in when you're constructing your fleets, because you have to have it so that you can alternate fighting the boss. And you also are going to have your two boss fleets be able to mob. They're going to be able to have to heal. They can't just be the most DPS, because if they do and they take damage while they have to beat all those mobs on the way, they're going to struggle and maybe not survive in the boss fleet. This is a very unique change. I think it's going to be interesting. I'm very excited to play it, but it is something that is going to be very annoying. The other thing I want to note is that it only applies to the last fleet you use to fight a boss. So for example, when you have to fight the boss 3 times, when you use fleet 1 to fight the boss the first time, it will be analyzed and it will have all the debuffs. Then you use fleet 2 to fight it the second time and you beat the boss. Now fleet 2 will be analyzed. Fleet 1 will lose its analyzed status, and the third time the boss appears, you can use fleet 1 again without penalty. That's really just a long way to say that you have to alternate between your two fleets fighting the boss. The bosses themselves look pretty challenging. Here are all the bosses for World 15 as well as World 14.4 for some context. 15.1 has Chitose and Chiyoda. 15.2 has Issei retrofit and Hyoga retrofit. Those are also the only two bosses with heavy armor. So in 15.2, you're probably going to have to change your fleet composition up to deal with heavy armor. In 15.3, you have Zuoho twice, so obviously retreat, and then she comes back with more HP. And then in 15.4, you have 4 bosses. You start off with a Zukaku, who seems very similar to Mogami at medium armor, and then in the second run, you actually switch over to a dual boss, Hatsuzuki and Watsuzuki, who are both light armor, so need to be prepared for that armor switch. And then once you defeat them, you fight Zukaku again with the highest HP pool of any boss in the main storyline. This is going to be a very difficult fight, and it's going to cost you a lot of oil. Listed below are the oil caps that are programmed into the game. However, when you log into the game tomorrow after maintenance, those oil caps will not be into effect because there will be no clearing mode yet. That will come later, and thus it's going to cost a lot of oil to get through these chapters as you have to keep resummoning the bosses. If you were wondering what the maps looked like, here's what 15.1 looks like, here's what 15.2 looks like, here's what 15.3 looks like, and here is what 15.4 looks like. If you notice, 15.3 and 15.4 both don't really have boss spawns, and that's characteristic of the confusion that's going to happen when you have to respawn the boss, and that's just kind of part of being a new mechanic. So with all of that difficulty in store for you in the near future, let's look at, is it worth it? As far as gear drops, there is not a lot to be happy about here. There is a Ryusei at 15.3. That seems like insanity if you want to grind the Ryusei at 15.3, but I guess that's like the only good thing that drops gear-wise. Of course, Houston 2 is going to be dropping at 15.4. Oh my, I'm going to have to grind that, hopefully not for forever, like Bunker Hill. So let us take a look at what Houston 2 brings to the table. So Houston 2 is a US light cruiser. She is a CV-81. She's not a heavy cruiser like was initially released. This is the second one that was built. She's a Cleveland class, and so her stats reflect that. Cleveland class doesn't have amazing stat these days, but she is kind of more focused on firepower and anti-air. She does not have an anti-air gun +1 though, and her anti-air stat is actually much lower than what the traditional anti-air powerhouses are. These days, her stats wouldn't be considered that great, and she doesn't even have torpedoes. She gives that up for more firepower damage. Skill number 1 gives her plus 12% firepower and anti-air stat. Those are the two stats that she focuses on, so that makes a lot of sense. Also, every 12 seconds, she fires a special barrage that has its damage scale on this skill's level. And finally, for every 2 enemy planes shot down within the anti-air circle, all Eagle Union ships gain anti-air stat by plus 8%, which can stack up to 3 times to 24%. Honestly, this skill here is anti-air focused, which is kind of important for World 15 as we're finding out. And it seems cool that you can buff Eagle Union ships, all of them, so New Jersey to San Diego, that seems cool, but honestly, this doesn't seem fantastic. You do have to shoot down 2 enemy planes first without the buff, and it only gives anti-air stat, which only matters until it doesn't. It's one of this weird stats where it's like, I need this amount to get through the level, and then I don't really need more than that. It's particularly slow to stack too, and I just feel like there are other anti-air ships that are better. Like a Cheshire Cilia combo just seems like it'll be a lot better than putting this with San Diego. But, you know, maybe you will need a ton of different anti-air ships, but I'd almost rather have like something with an anti-air gun +1 like in Isuzu than putting a slot with this ship. Now, she does have another skill, so let's read into that. When this ship has its health go under 15%, and I'll just stop right there and say that 15% is kind of low. A lot of these skills actually trigger at 30% because a lot of times you can get one shot from 20% to 0, and then this skill will never trigger. So this seems a little bit low, so let's see if it's any good. Her speed is decreased by 60% for 3 seconds. That doesn't seem like a good thing, but we'll keep going. She heals 2% of her HP every 1 second for 3 seconds, so that's 6% right there. And then at the end of those 3 seconds, she gains an additional 12%. So she gets basically 18% health. So if she's under 15, she'll go back way over 15 by getting an 18% buff. And then she gets a 5% evasion rate for the rest of the battle. That sounds great. We like evasion rate. We like rest of battle, but reminder, it's only 5%. And this is only going to trigger at the point of the battle where she might not have that much longer in the rest of the battle. She's literally already under 15%. And yes, she does heal a bunch. I don't know. I don't really see this being a great skill. It's like it's got the basics there, but it's not enough, I don't think. And it only triggers once, which makes sense. Outside of this, she gets an all-out assault. She's bringing 1 anti-air to the table for fleet tech and 1 firepower to the table for fleet tech. So really, she seems more like a collection ship. Like, I think she would struggle a lot to even be incorporated in a fleet to obtain her. And at that point, you've already obtained her, so it doesn't even matter. But yeah, I think she's collection only, and obviously that's super important for drops, but I mean, she's not like amazing. But of course, you will get plenty of gems as you clear through these, and honestly, I'm super excited for the challenge. Stick around to the channel and subscribe if you want to get more content on World 15. I'm sure I'll be streaming it, or at least making a video, or doing something related to World 15, because I'm excited about this content. I'm excited to give it a shot and fleet build again, and I will start doing that as soon as I get settled. If you were wondering why the audio quality in this video is a little bit less than my usual, it's because I'm on the road, but I will be getting back soon, and I will definitely get into World 15 when I do. Thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have a blast playing through World 15. Don't beat yourself up too hard for the challenge. It's meant to be fun. Let's get at it, and definitely send me clear pictures or clear videos on social media if you do it. Take care, and until next time, guys.